Hey, are you struggling with how to actually teach your online course? Well, in this lesson, we're learning all about Rosenshine's principles. So that way you can be a better teacher and your students are going to learn faster and better. Hi, I'm Angel from RT Course Experts, and we help creative teachers with technical services for their online courses, their membership communities, and coaching websites. In this lesson, we're learning all about Rosenshine's principles. We're going to learn what is it, why use it, how to use it. We're going to go over an example, and finally, we'll summarize with our top tips. First of all, what is it? Well, these are principles that help instructors teach any idea and concept to students. So these are techniques that help instructors. So why would you use it? Well, it helps teachers, coaches, community leaders explain and help students understand new topics faster and better. So let's get into the how-to guide and review the principles. We're going to go over 10 different principles. The first principle is to review prior topics. So when you're teaching a new lesson, take a moment and review the prior content. What did they previously learn? What did you go over? What were the foundational blocks? What did you learn in the last few lessons? What did you just learn in that last lesson? Or what are some prerequisites that you just want to review? So you want to do that prior lessons. Make sure that their foundation is set. So that's the first principle. The second principle is to review new content in small steps. So small baby steps. So don't just turn on the water hose and flood them with all new information. So they're on a particular lesson. They're learning about a new creative topic. It could be design or making or fashion, whatever it is that you teach. So you're going to do that and break that up. You're going to use your curriculum, whether it's a bunch of PDFs or video courses, whatever it is, you're going to break up your content. You're going to chunk it up. You're going to break it up into modules, and then you're going to have lessons within each module. And then you could decide how far, how little do you want to break it up? Come up with that basic curriculum to structure it, and then you're going to teach every step by step. The third principle is to ask questions and challenge their thinking. So you're going to ask students questions. Take a minute to think, how would you do something? How would you do this particular problem? How would you create this look? How would you create this sound, etc.? So you're going to ask them, you're going to challenge their thinking, and they might have some basic primitive ways to get to that effect, or they might not know about certain tools and techniques that you're about to teach them. So as you're doing your modules and lessons, you're going to want to challenge them and talk about, hey, what if you wanted to do a certain thing? How would you do that? Next, you're going to provide process tools like models and diagrams and flowcharts. You're going to give them some tools that helps them walk through, like, hey, here are the 4 steps, or here's this cool acronym that helps remind you of what the 5 things are we need to do in order to do something that you're teaching. So give them some sort of model, give them a diagram, an acronym, something like that to help them understand the high-level process to do the thing that you're teaching. The next principle is to have students learn by trying. So once they've learned a couple of steps in a lesson, have them try, have them practice, have them follow along. It doesn't have to be the full lesson. It could simply be a part, a step, to have them practice several times until they get that one part right. Or maybe you might do that across multiple lessons or at the end of every module. But have your students practice. If you're an online course teacher, a community leader, a coach, you might give them templates. You might give them samples. Maybe you're editing a video. You might give them those clips, those source clips, those source sound effects, a printout for, if you're doing scrapbooking, whatever it is. So you might help them. They'll have the tools and you give them some basic elements for them to practice. The next principle is all about checking for understanding and correcting. So you're going to want to look at some stuff that came out. You're going to want to look at some of the examples and that were made by your students and give them feedback. It doesn't have to be one-on-one. It could be generically. It could be like, So if your diagram came out skewed, well, then you need to change this. Or if your paint is a little too red in this area, try doing this other thing. So you know what the common pitfalls are as you're going through each lesson. So you can do that. Or if it's a more high-end coaching or lesson, then they could submit content, they could submit homework and assignments, or they might do a show and tell. Maybe there's a community channel or a discussion group so they can present there. And then in addition to you being the teacher providing feedback, this will be good for your community and your peers to also help out and provide unique points of view. And that's going to maybe set you up later for after that high-end course or mid-level course, you can then offer a recurring subscription to a community or coaching or other services like that. The next principle is all about monitoring student success rates. How are they doing? This is like testing. Is it too easy for them? Is it too hard for them? How can you potentially adjust your lesson or have the students adjust the way they're taking the lessons? Maybe they'll stay on a particular lesson until they get to a certain level of proficiency. Or maybe if it's too hard, they should go back to the last module or practice a certain technique before going on. Okay? So this is just like the story with the porridge, not too hot and not too cold. So you're going to want to adjust your outer curriculum, your modules, your lessons, your assignments so that they're not too easy and they're a little challenging. They're not boring that they could do with their eyes closed. They didn't even have to take the course. They're not too difficult that they get stuck and give up on your course. Especially those first few lessons, you want to build that momentum. And then also remember, a lot of people drop out in the later parts of our online course. They just don't complete. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they learned what they already needed. Maybe it got too difficult. So you're just going to want to keep balancing that and provide guidance. You'll have a general outline, but then also you can give some verbal cues to help them find that sweet spot in your education. The next principle is to use scaffolds. So things like checklists, these help the students get through content, get through tasks. So earlier we learned about models, but now we're also giving them a step-by-step. Here are the things that you need to do this thing. When you're designing a logo, do these certain steps. When you're cutting your fabric, do these certain steps. You know, it could be a short list, 4 or 5 items, or it could be a longer list, like a 12-step procedure to ensure, that your new clothing design is perfect. The next principle is all about independent practice. So this is where students actually go ahead and do something. And this could be a little bit bigger than some of the prior things where they were just testing or learning this one step. So now you're going to want them to kind of recall, to use your tools, your checklists, your flow charts, etc., your samples, and they're going to kind of do something bigger from end to end. So this might be at the end of a module, or this might be at the end of your course. You're going to have them create this one big thing that's going to prove that they've learned and that they've completed their journey where they didn't know something and now they're at that next level of skill. So so this is about independent practice. They could still check in but ideally they're doing something you've taught them. They have the resources, they have content, they have videos, they have docs, ebooks, etc., whatever it is that you're teaching with, and they can use that to hopefully create that next thing that's the goal of the course. And again, it could be at a module level or it could be at the whole course level. And the final principle is to do periodic reviews. So that's where you're checking in with your students. That's where students are checking in with the teacher, the instructor. This is just like having a coach in real life that's giving you feedback at each of your milestones. So within a course, you might have several check-ins. Within a community, you might pick a day a month or, at certain milestones in a program and have people share, do reviews, give each other feedback, and also to post about problems that they might be struggling with. Even though they've done something 5 times or 10 times, they might still be struggling with something, or how to handle certain corner cases. So that's something, maybe your course was a little more general. So the corner cases might be harder to talk about, so they can share that and you could provide feedback on those different use cases as they get in their reps to build out those skills. Now let's check out an example. Let's say you're teaching how to make a cookbook. Okay, you have an online course, you have a community, you're trying to teach how to make a cookbook. Maybe you know all about cooking and writing, but you didn't really go to school for education, so you need to level up your teaching skills. So let's talk about how you might use Rosenshine's principles to make a better course and a better community for how to build your own cookbook. In this example, you're teaching how to make a cookbook and your students are taking your course and are on your community so that they can make their own cookbook for whatever they like. So let's go ahead and use the 10 principles and create that cookbook course and community. So first of all, we're going to want to go ahead and review prior modules. So maybe prior modules talk about marketing and creating a book and what are the parts of a book. So you're going to just go over those prior things to orient them. And before you dig into every part of the book, maybe your next few lessons are about the recipes. And in the prior lessons, you told them about the title and publishing and whether you self-publish, all that other stuff happen. And then as you're reviewing, you're also, so the very next thing you need to do, and that's when you start your next set of content. So next, you're going to want to break the different parts of a recipe. There's a bunch of instructions there, and you're going to want to break those out into different lessons. There might be one or more photos. There might be ingredients. There might be step by step. There might be instructions. So you're going to want to break all that up. And then since you're teaching on how to create a cookbook, this is really important. And so those are going to, break those out across different lessons. And maybe there's a whole module on just the recipe part. Next, you're going to ask questions at the end of every lesson. So if you're going over the recipe photos, you're going to ask questions and challenge the students, what are the important photos that you need to represent the steps in creating this, meal. So you're going to want to go over and you're going to challenge them. Can you represent it in 3 steps or 5 steps? It's not just a before and after photo. So you're going to challenge your students to really think about the things that you've taught them. And so that they can do, a perfect job based on whatever cookbook they're trying to create, whether it's an Asian, Latino, kids, gluten-free, whatever kind of cookbook you're teaching them, but you're going to want to challenge them to really think about their clients and their needs using the techniques that you're teaching them. The next principle would be to give your students a step-by-step flow chart on how to create a book, right? Maybe it's a process diagram that says, here are the 7 main steps to create the content for your book. And then maybe there's a separate flow chart on how to publish it. So we'll do that later, but at least you're giving them these different charts, these different models, these frameworks that they can use and follow. Maybe it's a diagram, maybe it's how to lay out something, what are the 5 different ways here are the 5 steps to create the cover for your cookbook. So whatever it is, but you're going to give them a flow chart, something to help them out and organize all the different lessons, all the different modules, so many details. And using a flow chart or a diagram like that will really help. The next principle is really about having your students practice. You might have them create one recipe, and that might just be one lesson, or you might have them practice on a couple of lessons and do something bigger. So one lesson might be to identify all the ingredients for a particular recipe. What are they? What are their proper names? What are they also known as? What is the measurement? What condition are the items? Is it cold, refrigerated, warm? So you're going to want to have them really practice there. And from that, they're going to learn. And then you're going to also, over time, get feedback, and that's going to help you make your lessons even better. The next Rosenshine principle would be where you're reviewing your student recipes and you're giving them tips. You're looking at the content. Maybe you go over a couple of generic examples of first-time recipes and you're giving them feedback. It could be very personal, depending on how much they've paid, whether it's a program or a high-end coaching, or you could just simply go over a couple of different first-time recipes and then give feedback so that students can learn and say, oops, I did that. So you're going to be giving them tips. Or in a more high-end thing, there might be submitting their homework or their assignments or their examples to you through a discussion group or community, or even to share like a show and tell with the different classmates. The next Rosenshine technique would be to adjust your lessons based on their skill level. So maybe the lesson got too hard, or maybe the lesson is too easy. So you might say, if for extra credit, try doing this, or if this is your first time, start with just this part. So you're going to give them some advice, and so that way every student can kind of push themselves a little harder or make it a little simpler so that they can do it that first time. And maybe the second time they go a little bit harder, just like anything. But you're going to give them that range that will allow them to take this content and either, get that first version out there, or if they already have a little bit of experience and they're at an intermediate level, or you have a big range in your students. Some are before intermediate, but not beginners. Some are intermediate. Some are a little more advanced, but they're not experts yet. So you're going to provide some different guidance so that your students can really be in that zone that is challenging, but not too hard and not too easy. The next Rosenshine principle would be to provide a checklist to your students. So you may want to provide a checklist on things to verify before talking to a publisher, or things to verify before you upload your final content to the self-publishing platform. So that would be a great checklist that would be very helpful. They can make sure that, the art is high quality, they have the color, they have the ISBN number, all that sort of stuff. And you, as the cookbook expert, can help your students with that. And a checklist will go a long way. That would be a great PDF resource or a Google Doc resource that you could provide to your student. The next Rosenshine principle would be independent practice. So you might have your students create a book outline all on their own, what they're thinking about, or maybe it's just the first few chapters, but it gets them going and it lets them think about every part of the book. So they're going to create an outline, almost like the table of contents. They're going to fill in what's the intro, what are the sections, the different kinds of recipes, the layout, whatever it is. So maybe every recipe has a history or the goals. It's up to the different, students at creating the cookbooks. But at least you're going to challenge your students to go ahead and take all these little lessons that they've learned and put it together and really try to do some sort of bigger independent project. That would be a great way for you to push on your students so that they can really exercise, do the thing, and then if necessary, go back to the content, go back to the flowcharts and the checklists and all that sort of stuff, and make sure that they've learned every part that they need. The final principle would be to get independent reviews. So you would want your cookbook students to share. Maybe they're sharing on the community, or maybe they're sharing on the online course platform, but they're sharing their results. They're sharing their outline. They're sharing an example recipe. They're sharing some art. They're sharing the angle of photos that they take for their recipes. Even like the font choices that they've used, for the cover of the book and the font on the inside, any of these kind of things. So you're going to want your students to share, and then you as a coach and their peers are going to provide feedback. So that's a very important principle in learning and growing, is to just get feedback. In the end, businesses like yours can level up by using some of the Rosenshine principles. At least have your students practice, independent practice a mini step, practice a big step. But those practice sessions are going to really help them improve their learning. And then you can work in a variety of feedback, whether it's, an assignment, whether it's coaching, whether it's a community, a show and tell, however you structure it. But think about practicing, and think about getting feedback. So let's summarize. Here are the top things you need to know about Rosenshine's principles. Review prior stuff. Review prior topics. Use small steps. Questions. Provide diagrams and flowcharts. Have students practice. Check their understanding and correct. Don't be too easy. Don't be too hard. Use checklists. Make them do some larger independent practice and provide periodic reviews. So now you're a lot smarter on how to teach using Rosenshine's principles, whether you're teaching design or making or fashion or AV or performing, whatever it is that you teach, you're going to be a lot smarter and a lot more successful. To learn more, check out the info and links in the notes. If you're loving this stuff, go ahead and subscribe to keep leveling up your creative training business. And if you need any tech help with your online courses, membership community, coaching website, visit www.artsycourseexperts.com. And if you got value out of this, please share with someone you care about that needs a boost. Thanks for hanging out. Let's stay in touch.